The night my wife slapped me across the face in my own dining room, something inside me didn't just break, it finally woke up. It wasn't just the sting on my cheek or the shock of it happening in front of a table full of people. It was the realization that I had been living as a stranger in my own life for years, and somehow I had convinced myself that it was normal. My name is Daniel Carter, and for 7 years I thought I had built a marriage based on loyalty, patience, and sacrifice. I worked as a contractor, long days, sometimes 60 hours a week, taking whatever jobs came my way just to keep things running. From the outside, it probably looked like I had everything together. A steady job, a house, a wife, a full home. But what people didn't see was how that house slowly stopped feeling like mine, and how the people inside it stopped treating me like I belonged there. That night started like so many others. We were all sitting around the dining table, me, my wife Michelle, her parents, her 2 brothers, and her younger sister. 7 people in total, all under the roof of a house I had bought before I even met Michelle. I remember looking around the table, plates full, voices loud, everyone comfortable, like this was just the way things had always been. And in a way, it had been like this for years. Michelle's mother, Linda, was talking again. She had a way of speaking that wasn't really a conversation, more like a running commentary on everything I was doing wrong with my life. That night, she was going on about how I needed to work harder, how a real man would be making more money, how her daughter deserved better. I had heard it so many times that the words usually just passed through me without leaving a mark. I had trained myself to stay quiet, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, but something was different that night. Maybe I was more tired than usual. Maybe I was just done pretending. Or maybe, for the first time, I actually let myself feel what I had been ignoring for 5 years. So I spoke. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone. I just said one sentence, calm and honest. I said that maybe if I wasn't supporting 6 extra people, we might actually have more money. The entire table went silent. You could feel the air shift. Michelle's face changed instantly, her expression tightening, her cheeks turning red. She looked at me like I had just crossed a line that should never be crossed. She asked me what I had just said, like she needed to hear it again to believe it. Before I could even respond, her hand came across my face. The sound echoed in the room. It was sharp, loud enough that her sister gasped out loud. My head turned slightly from the force, and for a second, I just sat there, trying to process what had happened. My cheek burned, but the pain wasn't the worst part. It was the humiliation, the disbelief, the realization that the person I had spent 7 years with thought it was acceptable to hit me for speaking the truth. Michelle stood there, her voice shaking with anger as she told me not to ever disrespect her mother again. I slowly reached up and touched my face. Everyone was staring at me, but not one of them said a word in my defense. Not one person at that table, people who had been living in my house for years without contributing anything, felt the need to step in. Her father stood up then, pointing at me, demanding that I apologize immediately. I looked around the table, really looked this time. These were people who had been eating my food, using my utilities, sleeping under my roof, and treating me like I was the problem. None of them worked, none of them paid rent, none of them even pretended to appreciate what I had been doing for them. And in that moment, something inside me settled. I simply said no. Michelle pushed her chair back, shocked, like she couldn't believe I had just refused. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't yelling. I just felt clear, like I had finally reached the end of something that should have ended a long time ago. I stood up slowly, walked upstairs, and grabbed a duffel bag. I packed clothes, my laptop, and a few essentials without rushing, like I had already made the decision in my mind before I even moved. When I came back downstairs, they were all still sitting there, frozen in place, like they were waiting for me to come back and fall in line again. I looked at Michelle and told her I would be back tomorrow. Then I walked out the front door and got into my truck. That was the moment everything changed. I sat in the parking lot of a hotel about 20 minutes away, my phone in my hand, staring at the screen. There was one call I had been putting off for years, and that night I finally made it. I called my lawyer, Stephen Hayes, a man I had done work for in the past. When he answered, I didn't hesitate. I told him I wanted to file for divorce immediately. He met me at his office later that night, and I told him everything. The slap, the years of disrespect, the fact that my house had turned into a place where I was the only one contributing anything. He listened carefully, asking questions, taking notes, breaking everything down in a way that made it feel real. When I told him the house was in my name alone and that we had no kids and barely any shared assets, he leaned back and told me something I hadn't expected to hear. He said I had a clean exit. Those words hit me harder than the slap had. For years, I had felt trapped, like leaving would destroy everything or make me the bad guy. But in that moment, I realized I had been holding myself in place. We filed the paperwork the next morning. Michelle was served by noon. She called me over and over again, but I didn't answer. When she finally texted, asking me to come home so we could talk, I told her there was nothing left to discuss. That house didn't feel like home anymore, and I wasn't going back to being disrespected in my own life. That same day, I made a series of calls that set everything in motion. I contacted the utility companies and shut off the services to the house. Electricity, water, gas, internet, everything. Then I called a locksmith and had every lock on the property changed. When I went back to the house that afternoon, it was empty. No cars in the driveway, no noise inside. The locksmith worked quickly, replacing everything while I walked through the rooms one last time. The place was a mess. Dishes piled up, laundry scattered everywhere, belongings thrown around like no one cared about the space at all. I took pictures of everything, documenting the condition, making sure I had proof of what the house had become. Then I walked out, locked the door behind me, and left. That evening, Michelle called again, this time panicking. She said they couldn't get into the house, that the locks were changed. I told her I knew. She tried to argue that it was our house, but I corrected her. It was my house, and she was no longer welcome there. When she realized I had shut off the utilities as well, her tone changed. The anger turned into something colder, something threatening. She told me I would regret what I had done. But the truth was, I already regretted the last 5 years of my life more than anything else. Over the next few days, the messages came nonstop. Her family accused me of everything they could think of. They threatened lawsuits, called me names, tried to paint me as the villain. I blocked all of them except Michelle, keeping a record of everything for the divorce. She eventually sent a long message apologizing for the slap, saying it was a mistake, begging me not to punish her entire family for what she had done. She talked about her mother's health, about how they had nowhere to go, about how we could fix things if I just gave them another chance. I read it carefully, then replied with one simple truth. She had chosen them, and now she had to live with that choice. A few days later, I drove past the house and saw them sleeping in their cars in the driveway. It wasn't easy to see, but I didn't stop. For the first time in years, I understood that their situation wasn't my responsibility. Over the next couple of weeks, reality finally caught up to them. They started finding jobs, making arrangements, figuring things out the way they should have done years ago. The same people who claimed they couldn't survive without me suddenly found ways to survive. Michelle eventually signed the divorce papers. When we met at my lawyer's office, she barely looked at me. She said I had destroyed her family, but I knew the truth. They had done that themselves long before I ever walked away. The divorce was finalized quickly. No alimony, no disputes over the house, nothing left tying us together. Months later, I ran into Michelle at a grocery store. She looked different, thinner, quieter, like life had finally forced her to see things clearly. She told me her family had turned on her after everything fell apart, blaming her for losing me, treating her the same way they had always treated others. For the first time, she understood what I had been living through. She apologized again, this time without excuses, without trying to fix anything. She just acknowledged the truth. I thanked her for saying it, but I also told her it didn't change anything. When she asked me if I was happy now, I thought about my quiet house, my peaceful mornings, the absence of constant pressure and criticism. And for the first time in a long time, the answer was simple. Yes. That night, I sat on my porch alone, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty but freeing. No expectations, no tension, no one demanding more from me than I could give. Just my house, my life, and the peace I had been missing for years. And I realized something that I wish I had understood much earlier. Sometimes losing everything you thought mattered is the only way to finally gain yourself back.